Hi guys, welcome to another episode of INTJ and INFP Coffee. Today we are going to be talking about INTPs.
Yay!
Dun 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 dun. Okay.
As you can see, we have a little cattail in our viewfinder. Do you want to come say hi? Do you want to come say hi to the audience? No, she's like, no.
The cat has no FE. Sorry guys. I don't know that many INTPs in real life, but my dad is INTP, so it will mostly be based on him. And hopefully there will be some interesting points about, a dominant feeler growing up with someone who has like no feelings. I mean really like low FI and FE. I mean you guys know what I mean.
Yeah, I feel like we have like one INTP friend for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then there's another one who's either like INTP or ENTP, but
okay.
Yeah, so for the INTP-INTJ relationship, it's an interesting one because seemingly we're very similar in a lot of ways, but ultimately we have completely different cognitive functions. So it's kind of it's kind of an interesting relationship. We can kind of find refuge in one another, INTJs and INTPs. Like, I feel like in school, I think I found my INTP friend very quickly because we both just didn't really like fit in to like the rest of the kind of social group, and we kind of recognized one another as like I don't know, maybe like social outsiders, but we kind of related to one another. So it was really nice. There was kind of there's a lot of comfort with the INTP INTJ relationship. I think both being like low feelers too.
Right.
We don't have to do all that feeling stuff. We don't really care about the social norm stuff. We can, there's a lot to talk about, I think. But the thing is that I think it can be hard for us to actually meet one another because we're both so quiet and socially awkward. So making that first step with an INTJ or INTP might be kind of difficult or might take a while. But then once you do, then it's like, oh my god, we can just let go of like all of that stuff that we're bad at and just be comfortable with one another.
I'm just imagining a cocoon of no FE.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like the anti-FE cocoon zone. For INTPs, what I notice is that the way they understand something is so thorough, and yet they see it as normal. Like that's just what they live with. And sometimes they just explain some concept, and I'm like, dude, it's like an onion, like layers and layers and layers. But that's just how their mind works. So they see it as something everyday. I think their auxiliary and E make them really good hypothetical debate partners, kind of like the ENTP, except you have to get them out of their shell. Once they do, oh my goodness. I'm distracted by the kitty. Yeah, once the INTP gets out of their shell, their NE is just as good as the ENTP, basically. They will have a flurry of debate topics. Alex!
Sorry, I didn't. Well, I thought I muted it. I don't know what
Lol.
else to do.
Okay. INTPs are really good at seeing theoretical viewpoints, and their NE allows them to see different sides of theoretical viewpoints. And they do it without taking it personally, which makes them the best people to talk to. And since their FE is so low, they pretty much will never try to convince you.
Alright, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So from an INTJ perspective, I do think like INTP's brains are just like fascinating to me because it's like we're very similar. We're both like INTs, but yet we don't have any cognitive functions, in common. So like TINE is so foreign to me, and to see like an INTP just like use that at ease is like, I don't know. It's like slightly impressive, slightly intimidating sometimes, honestly. But yeah, they're super knowledgeable, and just the way that they have this kind of like logical creativity almost.
Oh,
I think,
yeah, sure.
Like INTJs are a lot more kind of, well, INTJs are creative in different ways, but I think, INTPs have this kind of logical creativity that's really interesting to look into.
So about the whole logical creativity thing, I forgot to do the socionics part, but I do remember like INTPs, INFPs, we're lookalikes, I believe. I think I'm right. Okay, so Their SI generally gives their logical structures and systems in their mind like a lot of details, which is really impressive. And it's kind of how INFPs use their SI to like furnish their fantasy world inside. The other similarity and why we can look similar is we're obviously both introverted perceivers, and so we have perceiving body language, but like not so much. And also the auxiliary NE usually bubbles up, so it makes the INTP quite bubbly and effervescent, just like an INFP. And a lot of times they can have really quirky humor, and they can often communicate in a really unique way that's personalized to them via SI. So a lot of times, so this is something I know just from YouTube, so thanks INTPs who comment. They often use words in their own way that make sense to them, and sometimes even make up their own terminology. So I attribute that to TI and SI.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of these like
Comments.
TI such specific word usage that to like us TEsers it's like what what are you talking about? But it makes sense once you kind of like translate it.
Yeah, I think someone was saying that they're anti establishment and they're an INTP.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, like I think for maybe an INTJ, sometimes INTPs can be kind of like super quiet and just like so self-contained and kind of in themselves that it's just like really hard for us to approach them. But then once you get to know them and once their NE bubbles up and like does all of the crazy exploration and fun things that it does, then yeah, like once their NE bubbles up, it's so easy to talk to them.
So I'm going to talk about the SC blind spot, which is something INTPs have in common with INFPs, which is also why we're lookalikes. Sometimes he can be really clumsy, and the INTP I know, who is my dad, is really tall. He's like 6 foot, and the way he walks into a space is generally quite awkward. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, even if they're not doing anything clumsy, like dropping something, they seem a little bit detached from their external. They seem a bit detached from their external environment. Yeah, like they don't fit into the space somehow. I don't know if you can tell with me right here, but I don't feel like I'm fitting into the space either.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think just both like TI and NE are so kind of like removed from reality, or rather they're just kind of in their own reality that you can kind of tell that they're not like very engaged with the physical environment a lot of times. This has just turned into like the cat show. That's a show.
Finally, I wanted to talk about their inferior FE. This does not manifest how you would think it would manifest. Like, just when I think inferior FE, I think rude, but usually INTPs are overly polite. It's like generally, I think the INTPs my age, they're generally like overcompensating for not exactly knowing the FE things to do. So the things that they do know, like SI-FE things, like saying goodbye at a party, they would do it with like full force. Like they will say goodbye to everyone very intentionally and leave. Yeah, like social norms are generally really good at that. Like for example, at a house party, my dad would almost never engage in like deep conversation or like emotional conversation. He'll engage in theoretical conversation, but then like for the greeting the people and for like taking a customary drink in Chinese culture, like he will definitely do all those things.
Right. Yeah, I can see that with the INTPs for sure. Yeah, it's kind of almost, I relate to that somewhat. Like I'm like FE blind and I don't like know how to do these things naturally, so I had to kind of learn them awkwardly. So I
see that too. Like if you ever hear Alex on the phone, she is so polite. It's like, hi, thank you for calling. That was amazing.
Yeah, and when I'm at a party, I also do that awkward thing where like I don't know how to interact with anyone, but then at the end I like go and be like bye to like everyone because I'm like, oh my god, I don't know if I'm like offending or not. I don't know what to do.
I need to draw a no FE cocoon and put like you and the INTP in it.
Yes, I know. That's exactly what I think our friendship should be referred to as, the no FE cocoon.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Another point though is that with INTJs and INTPs, since we have opposite cognitive functions, I think sometimes it can be hard to understand one another completely or very thoroughly maybe. Like we can have a lot of fun together and have really fun theoretical discussions or just feel very comfortable around one another. But I think when it comes to like more like deeper things or more intimate things, sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my head around the way they communicate, and I'm sure they probably have the same for me as well.
Okay, this is kind of interesting because I feel like I understand INTPs so well because so many of our processes are the same. And like obviously TI is different from FI, but as introverted judging is also really similar. Yeah, so I feel like I understand their structure and process so well, but the content is so different. Like usually we have wildly different interests.
So I guess I can get into like the Socionics relationship, which for INTJs and INTPs is quasi-identical. So I think that's kind of like the opposite of what I have with INTPs. Like we have the same interests, or we can talk about the same content pretty well, but we talk about it in like two completely different ways. And so what one website says, I guess we'll link that below, is that it can be like interesting conversation, but ultimately like a bit unsatisfying because maybe both parties feel like they can't really get to like a resolution. Yeah, I think it's kind of true. I think it's hard to take things away from like a conversation that I have with an INTP, and they probably feel the same way, or like if we try to give each other advice, I don't know if it's always the best thing.
Exactly my relationship with INFJs, which is like my quasi-identical.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, Socionics is working out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is something that you mentioned for your INFJ quasi-identical relationship, that we can view each other's use of our main two functions as a performance. Okay. Because to us that's like our subconscious functions that we prefer not to use. And I think that's kind of true. Sometimes INTPs make such rational decisions, I think because like they have their internal decision making process is TI based, so it's just based on like logic, right? And mine is like FI, so it's based on like what I want. And so I can be talking to INTPs and they just like do like the right thing or like the logical thing, and I'm just like, I feel so self-conscious. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to do what my FI wants to do. How can they just be like so rational and logical? And sometimes, yeah, it almost does feel like, oh my gosh, you're putting on a performance and like being what society should be. But no, I think that's just like what they are. But there is that kind of weird distortion of how we see each other, maybe.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, I just have one more point left, which is a surprise to no one, is that INTPs, they rarely show their emotions emotionally. Like so yeah, it's not to say that they don't have emotions and feelings, obviously, but the way to see that they have emotions will probably be through action or some other way. It's not really going to be that emotionally effective, except for in cases of extreme stress. Yeah, it's usually like in really negative situations that I see like an extreme outburst of emotion from like an INTP.
Yeah, or just generally I won't hear a lot about emotions from an INTP until like they are under extreme stress. Yeah. And then it comes out. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, no, this I thought was an interesting point, because apparently with quasi-identical relations we are usually sympathetic to one another but unable to give each other helpful advice. So I thought this was kind of in contrast to like the ESFJ video that we did earlier, where I think probably we're not at all sympathetic. Well, maybe not at all, but like it's harder for us probably to be sympathetic to one another because we just like we're in thinking and intuition and like sensing and feeling, so it's just such different realms. So with INTP, INTJs, it's like similar. So we are sympathetic, but still it's like still opposite cognitive functions. So it's hard to, it's hard to give helpful advice. But I want to say that, Socionics usually like points out all the negative things about like every single relationship. According to Socionics, you probably should just like not be friends with anybody. So on the whole,
except for your duo.
Yeah, exactly. Except for your duo. Everyone else is blocked out of your life. But
oh my gosh.
But no, I think in general, like the INTP INTJ relationship is a really good one.
Well, thank you so much for watching this episode. Let us know what you think of INTPs and INTPs. Are we correct? I mean, like, do you relate to INTJs and INFPs in the ways that we've discussed?
Thanks, guys, so much for watching. If you enjoy our content, then please consider pledging your support on Patreon, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!